She took a photo in a Mexican hotel room, smiling like she'd finally escaped. 3 days later, a nurse injected poison into her IV while she slept. The hospital called it natural causes. Her husband refused an autopsy. Case closed. But when investigators found the last image she ever took, the woman in that mirror looked more alive than she'd been in years. Hair messy, eyes bright. Caption never posted. I feel like myself again. 72 hours separated that smile from a body bag. The file told a story that didn't add up. Medical records, flight manifests, a compression garment soaked in blood, pharmacy logs with a medication that was never prescribed. One question wouldn't go away. If she was stable enough to be discharged, why did someone need her dead before morning?
Welcome to True Crime Story Files. Real people, real crimes, real consequences, because every story matters. Subscribe now, turn on the bell, and step inside the world where truth meets tragedy.
Lauren Morrison wasn't always quiet. Her family back in Florida remembers a woman who laughed easily, who danced in grocery store aisles when her favorite song came on, who talked with her hands and dreamed out loud. The kind of woman who made ordinary moments feel like celebrations. That version of Lauren existed until 2000. That's when she married Tariq al-Rashid, a wealthy Dubai-based logistics executive with deep family ties across the Emirates. The wedding was beautiful, lavish, the kind of fairy tale that makes people sigh when they see the photos. But fairy tales don't tell you what happens after the castle doors close. By 2021, Lauren had given birth to twin daughters. Motherhood changed her body the way it changes most women. Stretch marks, softer curves, exhaustion that lives in your bones. She loved her girls fiercely, but postpartum depression crept in like fillure. And Tariq? He began pulling away. Not all at once. Control never announces itself with sirens. It starts small. A comment here, a suggestion there. The way he'd glance at her body and say nothing, which somehow felt worse than saying something. Here's what control looks like when it's wrapped in gold. You stop singing without noticing. You stop laughing without permission. You stop existing without realizing you're gone. Lauren's Instagram told the story in reverse. Scroll back to 2019, and you'd see her, glowing, confident, carefree. Scroll forward to 2023, and the posts became fewer, more filtered, more posed. Her smile looked painted on. What her followers didn't see were the 47 drafted captions on her phone that never made it online. Investigators found them later. Little fragments of a woman trying to speak, feeling grateful today, deleted. Learning to love myself again, deleted. You can be surrounded by luxury and still feel empty, deleted after 2 minutes. The last draft, written 6 months before her death, read, "Some cages are lined with silk." She deleted it 3 minutes after typing it. What was she afraid of? Who would see it? What would happen if the wrong person understood what she meant? By early 2024, Lauren's world had shrunk to the walls of their Dubai villa. Tariq controlled the finances. He monitored her phone. He made decisions about her schedule, her friendships, even her clothing. Friends back home noticed she stopped calling, stopped responding to messages, stopped being Lauren. Her mother, Patricia Clemens, tried reaching out repeatedly. "I'd call, and she'd sound flat," Patricia later told investigators, like someone had turned down the volume on her personality. "I'd ask if she was okay, and she'd say, 'I'm fine, Mom, just tired.' But it was more than tired. It was like she was disappearing." Tariq framed it as protection, as cultural respect, as caring for his family the way a man should. But there's a difference between protection and possession. In January 2024, Lauren brought up the idea of cosmetic surgery. Not because Tariq asked, but because when she looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. She wanted to feel like herself again, to reclaim something that felt stolen by time, by childbirth, by invisibility. Tariq's response was immediate. According to phone records recovered later, their conversation that night lasted 11 minutes. No voices were raised. Neighbors confirmed that. But what was said behind closed doors left Lauren shaken. A close friend she confided in recalled Lauren's exact words. "He told me my body isn't mine to change, that it belongs to our family, to him, that altering it without his permission would be disrespectful." The friend pushed back. "What did you say?" Lauren had gone quiet for a long moment, then whispered, "What could I say?" That's the thing about losing yourself slowly. You don't notice the exact moment you stop fighting back. Lauren's disappearance wasn't sudden. It was surgical. One restriction at a time. One silence at a time. One dismissed dream at a time. And when she finally tried to reclaim her body, that's when disappearing became permanent. The night she mentioned surgery, Tariq didn't yell, didn't slam doors, didn't make a scene. He simply looked at her across their marble dining table and said, "A woman who dishonors her husband dishonors herself." That's when Lauren realized something that made her blood run cold. If her body wasn't hers, if her choices weren't hers, if her voice didn't matter, what would happen if she took it all back anyway? What would he do to a woman who dared to disobey? February 8th, 2024. Lauren told Tariq her mother was sick. It wasn't entirely a lie. Patricia had mentioned feeling under the weather during their last phone call. But Patricia had a cold, not a crisis. Nothing that required Lauren to fly halfway across the world on 3 days' notice. Tariq was in his home office when Lauren brought it up. She'd rehearsed the conversation in her head a dozen times, hands shaking as she knocked on his door. "My mom's not doing well," she said, voice carefully measured. "I think I should go see her, just for a week or two." For a moment, Tariq said nothing, just looked at her over the rim of his reading glasses, expression unreadable. Then his face softened. "Take care of her," he said quietly. "Family matters." Lauren blinked. She'd expected resistance, interrogation, maybe even refusal. Instead, he stood, walked over, and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let me know what flights you're looking at. I'll have my assistant arrange everything." It was the most tenderness he'd shown her in months. For 10 seconds, Lauren felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe she'd misjudged him. Maybe the distance between them could still be closed. Maybe he did still care. That hope lasted until she started packing. Lauren pulled her suitcase from the closet, the same navy blue one she'd used on their honeymoon. As she unzipped the inner lining to check for forgotten items, her fingers brushed against something hard and smooth. An AirTag. Small, white, tucked so carefully into the fabric that she never would have found it if she hadn't been looking. Her stomach dropped. How long had it been there? Months? Years? Every trip she'd taken, every time she'd left the house with that suitcase, he'd known exactly where she was. Lauren sat on the edge of the bed, holding the device in her palm, trying to steady her breathing. She thought about confronting him, demanding an explanation. But what would he say? That he was protecting her? That she was overreacting? That it was for her own good? She already knew the script. Instead, Lauren removed the AirTag, walked downstairs, and placed it on the entryway table, right where he'd see it when he got home. No note, no explanation. Just a quiet declaration, I know. But that left a bigger question. If he'd tracked her once, was there another way? Another device she hadn't found? Was he watching her even now? Over the next 3 days, Lauren moved carefully. She booked her flight using her mother's credit card. She researched clinics in Guadalajara, Mexico, using incognito mode on a library computer. She told no one except her mother the real reason for her trip. And on her last morning in Dubai, she did something she couldn't fully explain. Lauren sat on the bathroom floor, phone propped against the sink, and hit record. If you're watching this, something went wrong. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Tariq doesn't know where I really am. I told him I'm visiting my mom, but I'm going to Mexico. I'm getting surgery. I know he'd never approve, but I need this. I need to feel like myself again. If anything happens to me. She stopped, stared at her own reflection in the phone screen. What was she even saying? That her husband would hurt her? That going to Mexico for a cosmetic procedure was dangerous? It sounded paranoid, dramatic. Lauren deleted the video, but the fear that made her record it in the first place? That didn't delete so easily. Before leaving, she prepared one final safeguard. Lauren gathered copies of her medical consent forms, hotel reservations, and clinic information. She sealed them in a manila envelope and addressed it to her mother in Miami. On the front, in careful handwriting, "Open if I don't call by March 1st. She mailed it from a post office near the airport. Patricia would later tell investigators she thought it was odd. Lauren didn't usually send mail. Everything was texts and emails. But I figured maybe she was being sentimental. The envelope sat unopened on Patricia's kitchen counter for 2 weeks. By the time she opened it, her daughter was already dead. February 11th, Dubai International Airport. Lauren walked through security with her carry-on and a heart that wouldn't stop racing. She wore oversized sunglasses even though she was indoors, kept her head down, moved through the terminal like someone afraid of being seen. She checked her phone obsessively, half expecting Tariq to call, to somehow know, to stop her before she boarded. But the call never came. Flight EK-29 to Miami departed on time. Lauren Morrison settled into her seat, closed her eyes, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. Free, invisible, alive. She had no idea she only had 11 days left. Here's what freedom sounds like after years of silence, laughter that doesn't ask permission. Here's what hope looks like after slow erasure. A woman seeing herself in the mirror and smiling. Not for followers, not for a husband, but for herself. For 12 days, Lauren Morrison existed again, and that terrified someone enough to kill her. February 12th, 2024, Guadalajara, Mexico. Lauren arrived at the Centro Médico de Cirugía Estética just after noon. The clinic was modest but clean, tucked into a quiet neighborhood where bougainvillea climbed white stucco walls and the air smelled like street tacos and hibiscus. The intake nurse, a woman named Veronica, greeted her warmly. "First time in Guadalajara?" Lauren nodded, suddenly feeling self-conscious. "You'll love it here," Veronica said with a smile. "We take good care of our patients. You're safe." Safe. Lauren hadn't felt that word apply to her in a long time. The consultation was thorough. Dr. Javier Hernandez walked her through the Brazilian butt lift procedure step by step, the liposuction, the fat transfer, the recovery timeline. He explained the risks clearly, professionally. No pressure, no judgment. "Why did you choose this procedure?" he asked gently. Lauren hesitated. "How do you explain to a stranger that you're trying to remember who you used to be?" "I just want to feel like myself again," she finally said. Dr. Hernandez nodded. "Then let's make that happen." Surgery was scheduled for February 14th. Valentine's Day. The irony wasn't lost on Lauren. The procedure went smoothly, 3 hours under anesthesia. When Lauren woke in recovery, groggy and sore, the first thing she did was smile. Not because the pain wasn't real. It was. But because for the first time in years, she'd made a choice that was entirely hers. Over the next week, Lauren stayed in a recovery suite attached to the clinic. Veronica checked on her daily, bringing her soup, helping her change her compression garment, reminding her to walk short distances to prevent blood clots. Other patients came and went. Women from the US, Canada, even Europe. They swapped stories, laughed about their swelling, compared before and after photos, with the kind of easy camaraderie that only comes from shared vulnerability. Lauren hadn't felt this light in years. On February 16th, she FaceTimed her daughters. The twins were in their playroom in Dubai, babbling in that half-English, half-invented toddler language. They pressed their faces close to the screen, leaving smudgy fingerprints. "Mama!" they squealed in unison. Lauren's heart cracked open. "Hi, my babies. Mommy misses you so much." "When you come home?" one of them asked, tilting her head. "Soon, sweetheart. Very soon. And when I do, we're going to play so much. Mommy's going to take you to the park and dance with you and read you all your favorite stories." They giggled, delighted by the promise. Lauren ended the call with tears in her eyes. But they were good tears, hopeful tears. She was coming back better, stronger, more herself. What she didn't know was that halfway across the world, Tariq was unraveling the light. February 13th, Dubai. Tariq had called Lauren 6 times that day. She'd answered twice, each conversation brief and strained. "How's your mother?" he asked, voice flat. "She's managing. Still weak, but better." "When are you coming back?" "Soon, maybe another week." He didn't push, but something about her tone felt off, distant, guarded. That night, Tariq reviewed their joint credit card statements. No charges in Miami, no pharmacy visits, no urgent care, no hospital copays. Instead, there were charges in Houston, a layover hotel. Then nothing. He pulled up her flight records through his corporate travel account, one of the small privileges of wealth that Lauren had forgotten he had access to. Dubai to Miami, Miami to Houston, Houston to Guadalajara, Mexico. Tariq's jaw tightened. He called again. Lauren didn't answer. He called 5 more times, then 8, then 15. By February 17th, he'd called 23 times in a single day. Lauren silenced her phone and left it face down on the nightstand. She told herself he was just worried, that he'd calm down once she explained, that everything would be fine when she got home. But late at night, when the clinic was quiet and the painkillers wore off, a small voice whispered the truth she didn't want to hear. He knows, and he's furious. February 19th. Lauren was cleared to fly. Dr. Hernandez gave her final instructions. Keep the compression garment on. Avoid sitting directly on her buttocks. Stay hydrated. Watch for signs of infection or blood clots. Any dizziness, shortness of breath, chest pain, you go straight to the hospital. Understood? Lauren nodded. Veronica hugged her goodbye. Take care of yourself, okay? You deserve to be happy. Lauren smiled. I will. Thank you. For everything. She took one last photo in the mirror of her recovery suite. Hair messy, no makeup, compression garment visible under her loose dress. But her eyes looked alive. She typed a caption, I feel like myself again. Her thumb hovered over the post button. Then she thought of Tariq, of the questions, of the explanations she'd have to give. She saved it as a draft instead. February 20th, 2024. Lauren Morrison boarded her flight home with one thought. He'll forgive me when he sees me happy. She'd rehearsed what she'd say, how she'd explain. She'd apologize for the secrecy, but she'd stand firm on her choice. This was her body, her life, her decision. She believed love could survive honesty. She believed he'd see her side eventually. She believed she'd walk back into that villa, scoop up her daughters, and start the next chapter of her life, a better chapter. She was wrong about almost everything. Except one thing. She would see Tariq one last time. Just not the way she imagined. February 20th, 2024. 8:47 p.m. Dubai International Airport. Lauren's phone hit the floor first. The screen lit up as it skidded across the polished terminal tile. 47 missed calls from Tariq, all time-stamped within the last 6 hours. The black screen reflected her face for just a second before her knees buckled. Then, everything went sideways. One moment, Lauren was walking toward baggage claim, pulling her carry-on behind her, thinking about how she'd explain everything to Tariq. The next, her chest felt like someone had wrapped a steel band around it and was tightening it with every breath. Her vision blurred. The ground tilted. She grabbed for a nearby column, but missed. A businessman caught her elbow. Ma'am, are you okay?" Lauren tried to answer, but her words came out slurred. Her legs gave out completely. The man eased her to the floor, shouting for help. Within 90 seconds, airport paramedics arrived with a stretcher and a medical kit. "Can you tell me your name?" one of them asked, kneeling beside her. "Lauren," she whispered. "Lauren Morrison." "When did the pain start?" "Just now. I can't breathe right." The second paramedic checked her pulse, rapid and thready. Blood pressure dangerously elevated, oxygen saturation dropping. That's when he noticed the compression garment under her loose dress. "She's wearing surgical compression," he called out to his partner. "Recent procedure." They cut the garment away with medical shears, revealing the bruising and swelling consistent with recent cosmetic surgery. The lead paramedic radioed dispatch. "We have a post-surgical patient, likely Brazilian butt lift, based on presentation. Possible pulmonary embolism. Requesting immediate transport to nearest trauma center." In the ambulance, Lauren drifted in and out of consciousness. The siren wailed. The lights inside were too bright. Everything felt distant and muffled, like she was underwater. She grabbed the paramedic's wrist, her grip weak but desperate. "Don't call my husband," she whispered. The paramedic frowned. "Ma'am, you're listed as married. He's your emergency contact. We have to notify him." Lauren's eyes filled with tears, not from pain, from something worse. "Please," she begged. "Please, don't." But protocol is protocol. By the time the ambulance pulled into Al Barsha Medical Center, Tariq had already been notified. 9:23 p.m. Al Barsha Medical Center Emergency Department. The ER team moved fast. IV lines, cardiac monitor. CT scan ordered immediately to check for blood clots. Lauren was conscious but barely coherent, mumbling responses to questions about her medical history. Dr. Amina Khalid, the attending physician, reviewed the preliminary findings. "Her vitals are unstable, but she's responsive," Dr. Khalid told the nursing staff. "The CT will tell us more, but I'm not seeing immediate signs of a massive embolism. Could be a smaller clot, dehydration, or post-surgical complications compounded by the flight." A nurse leaned in. "Doctor, her husband just arrived." Dr. Khalid nodded. "Let him in, but keep it brief. She needs rest." The doctors said she'd survive. The nurses said she was stable. The cardiologist said she'd recover fully with proper observation and care. They were all right. Lauren Morrison was going to live. but someone else had already decided she wouldn't. 9:41 p.m. Tariq al-Rashid walked into Lauren's hospital room like a man carrying the weight of the world. His face was drawn, his eyes red-rimmed. He moved to her bedside slowly, carefully, and took her hand in both of his. "Lauren," he whispered, voice breaking. "What happened? Why didn't you tell me?" For a moment, Lauren couldn't speak. She just stared at him, searching his face for anger, for judgment. Instead, she saw tears. Tariq bent his head, pressing her hand to his forehead. His shoulders shook. "I thought I lost you," he murmured. "I thought I lost you." A nurse standing in the corner softened. Even the hardened ER staff exchanged glances. This was a man shattered by the thought of losing his wife. Lauren's own tears started falling. "I'm sorry," she whispered hoarsely. "I'm so sorry." "Shh, don't apologize. Just rest. We'll talk later. Right now, you just need to get better." He stroked her hair, whispered something in Arabic that sounded like a prayer, stayed by her side as the nurses adjusted her IV and checked her vitals. For 30 seconds, maybe 40, it looked like love. Real, devastating, human love. Then the nurse stepped out to update the attending physician. The moment the door clicked shut, Tariq's face changed. The tears stopped. The tenderness vanished. His expression went completely blank. Smooth, cold, empty. He released Lauren's hand and straightened up. She was drifting, sedated and exhausted, her eyes fluttering closed. Tariq pulled his phone from his pocket, opened his messages, stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he slipped the phone back into his jacket without typing anything. Not yet. He leaned down and kissed Lauren's forehead. His lips were ice. "Sleep well," he whispered. Then he walked out. 10:15 p.m. Dr. Khalid returned with the CT results. "Good news," she told Lauren, who was barely awake. "No major clots. You had a severe reaction, likely from dehydration and the altitude change combined with post-surgical stress. We're going to keep you for observation, at least 48 hours to be safe. But you're stable, and your prognosis is good." Lauren nodded weakly. "So, I'll be okay?" "Yes. With rest and monitoring, you should make a full recovery." For the first time since collapsing, Lauren felt a flicker of hope. She was going to be fine. She was going to go home. She was going to hold her daughters again. That night, 3 people held Lauren Morrison's fate. Tariq, who believed shame was worse than death. A nurse whose name Lauren would never know, who would soon be forced to choose between his family and the truth. And Lauren, who still believed her husband would choose love over honor. Only one of them was right. Before we move on, a quick thank you to everyone still watching and supporting this channel. Your presence truly keeps it alive. Your support makes a real difference, and we'd love to know who's here. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. If you're still tuned in right now, write, "I'm still here" in the comments. Let's see who's watching till the end. Don't forget to like this video too. Now, let's continue. February 20th, 2024, 8:47 p.m. Dubai International Airport. Lauren's phone hit the floor first. The screen lit up as it skidded across the polished terminal tile. 47 missed calls from Tariq, all time-stamped within the last 6 hours. The black screen reflected her face for just a second before her knees buckled. Then everything went sideways. One moment, Lauren was walking toward baggage claim, pulling her carry-on behind her, thinking about how she'd explain everything to Tariq. The next, her chest felt like someone had wrapped a steel band around it and was tightening it with every breath. Her vision blurred. The ground tilted. She grabbed for a nearby column, but missed. A businessman caught her elbow. Ma'am, ma'am, are you okay? Lauren tried to answer, but her words came out slurred. Her legs gave out completely. The man eased her to the floor, shouting for help. Within 90 seconds, airport paramedics arrived with a stretcher and a medical kit. Can you tell me your name? One of them asked, kneeling beside her. Lauren, she whispered. Lauren Morrison. When did the pain start? Just now. I can't breathe right. The second paramedic checked her pulse, rapid and thready. Blood pressure dangerously elevated, oxygen saturation dropping. That's when he noticed the compression garment under her loose dress. She's wearing surgical compression, he called out to his partner. Recent procedure. They cut the garment away with medical shears, revealing the bruising and swelling consistent with recent cosmetic surgery. The lead paramedic radioed dispatch. We have a post-surgical patient, likely Brazilian butt lift, based on presentation. Possible pulmonary embolism. Requesting immediate transport to nearest trauma center. In the ambulance, Lauren drifted in and out of consciousness. The siren wailed. The lights inside were too bright. Everything felt distant and muffled, like she was underwater. She grabbed the paramedic's wrist, her grip weak but desperate. Don't call my husband, she whispered. The paramedic frowned. Ma'am, you're listed as married. He's your emergency contact. We have to notify him. Lauren's eyes filled with tears, not from pain, from something worse. Please, she begged. Please don't. But protocol is protocol. By the time the ambulance pulled into Al Barsha Medical Center, Tariq had already been notified. 9:23 p.m. Al Barsha Medical Center Emergency Department. The ER team moved fast. IV lines, cardiac monitor, CT scan ordered immediately to check for blood clots. Lauren was conscious but barely coherent, mumbling responses to questions about her medical history. Dr. Amina Khalid, the attending physician, reviewed the preliminary findings. Her vitals are unstable, but she's responsive, Dr. Khalid told the nursing staff. The CT will tell us more, but I'm not seeing immediate signs of a massive embolism. Could be a smaller clot, dehydration, or post-surgical complications compounded by the flight. A nurse leaned in. Doctor, her husband just arrived. Dr. Khalid nodded. Let him in, but keep it brief. She needs rest. The doctors said she'd survive. The nurses said she was stable. The cardiologist said she'd recover fully with proper observation and care. They were all right. Lauren Morrison was going to live. But someone else had already decided she wouldn't. 9:41 p.m. Tariq al-Rashid walked into Lauren's hospital room like a man carrying the weight of the world. His face was drawn, his eyes red-rimmed. He moved to her bedside slowly, carefully, and took her hand in both of his. Lauren, he whispered, voice breaking. What happened? Why didn't you tell me? For a moment, Lauren couldn't speak. She just stared at him, searching his face for anger, for judgment. Instead, she saw tears. Tariq bent his head, pressing her hand to his forehead. His shoulders shook. I thought I lost you, he murmured. I thought I lost you. A nurse standing in the corner softened. Even the hardened ER staff exchanged glances. This was a man shattered by the thought of losing his wife. Lauren's own tears started falling. I'm sorry, she whispered hoarsely. I'm so sorry. Shh, don't apologize. Just rest. We'll talk later. Right now, you just need to get better. He stroked her hair, whispered something in Arabic that sounded like a prayer, stayed by her side as the nurses adjusted her IV and checked her vitals. For 30 seconds, maybe 40, it looked like love. Real, devastating, human love. Then the nurse stepped out to update the attending physician. The moment the door clicked shut, Tariq's face changed. The tears stopped. The tenderness vanished. His expression went completely blank, smooth, cold, empty. He released Lauren's hand and straightened up. She was drifting, sedated and exhausted, her eyes fluttering closed. Tariq pulled his phone from his pocket, opened his messages, stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he slipped the phone back into his jacket without typing anything. Not yet. He leaned down and kissed Lauren's forehead. His lips were ice. "Sleep well," he whispered. Then he walked out. 10:15 p.m. Dr. Khaled returned with the CT results. "Good news," she told Lauren, who was barely awake. "No major clots. You had a severe reaction, likely from dehydration, and the altitude change combined with post-surgical stress. We're going to keep you for observation, at least 48 hours to be safe. But you're stable, and your prognosis is good." Lauren nodded weakly. "So I'll be okay?" "Yes. With rest and monitoring, you should make a full recovery." For the first time since collapsing, Lauren felt a flicker of hope. She was going to be fine. She was going to go home. She was going to hold her daughters again. That night, 3 people held Lauren Morrison's fate. Tariq, who believed shame was worse than death. A nurse whose name Lauren would never know, who would soon be forced to choose between his family and the truth. And Lauren, who still believed her husband would choose love over honor. Only one of them was right. Before moving on, a quick thank you to everyone still watching and supporting this channel. Your presence truly keeps it alive. Your support makes a real difference. And we'd love to know who's here. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. If you're still tuned in right now, write, "I'm still here" in the comments. Let's see who's watching till the end. Don't forget to like this video too. Now, let's continue. February 21st, 2024. 11:47 a.m. Lauren woke to sunlight streaming through the hospital window. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the soreness registered. Her chest, her back, the dull ache from the IV in her arm. A different nurse from the night before came in with a breakfast tray. "Good morning, Mrs. Morrison. How are you feeling today?" "Better," Lauren said, and she meant it. The tightness in her chest was gone. Her breathing felt easier. "That's wonderful. Dr. Khaled will be by this afternoon to check on you. If everything looks good, you might be able to go home tomorrow." Tomorrow? Lauren smiled weakly. Just one more day. Then she could leave this behind. Explain everything to Tariq. Make things right. She picked at her breakfast, bland scrambled eggs and toast, and tried not to think about the conversation waiting for her at home. 3:30 p.m. Tariq visited again, this time bringing a small bouquet of white roses. He sat in the chair beside her bed, calmer than the night before, more controlled. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Much better. They said I might be discharged tomorrow." He nodded slowly. "That's good." A heavy silence settled between them. Finally, Lauren spoke. "Tariq, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. I should have told you. I needed this. I needed to feel like myself again." Tariq looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "We'll discuss it when you're home," he said quietly. "Rest now." He kissed her forehead, the same cold kiss from the night before, and left without another word. Lauren stared at the white roses on the bedside table. Something about them felt wrong. Sterile. Like flowers brought to a funeral, not a recovery. February 21st, 11:47 p.m. Lauren couldn't sleep. The hospital was quiet, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. She kept replaying Tariq's words, his tone, the blankness in his eyes. "We'll discuss it when you're home." It wasn't a promise. It was a warning. A young nurse named Fatima came in to check her vitals one last time before the shift change. "Everything okay?" Fatima asked, noting Lauren's elevated heart rate. Lauren hesitated. Then the words tumbled out before she could stop them. "I'm scared to go home." Fatima paused, setting down her clipboard. "Scared of what?" "My husband. He doesn't know I had surgery until now. He's going to be furious." "Has he ever hurt you?" "Not physically. But—" Lauren couldn't finish. "How do you explain control? How do you describe the slow suffocation of a marriage where love has been replaced by dominance?" Fatima squeezed her hand gently. "You don't have to go anywhere until you're ready. If you need resources, support services, I can help you." Lauren nodded, but they both knew she wouldn't ask. Fatima left the room at 11:52 p.m., making a note in Lauren's chart. Patient expressed anxiety about discharge. Monitor emotional state. It was the last time anyone asked Lauren if she felt safe. February 21st, 11:30 p.m. Across town, in his study, Tariq al-Rashid made a decision. He'd spent the past day weighing his options. Divorce would be public, messy, humiliating. His family's reputation would suffer. His business connections, many of whom held traditional views, would question his ability to manage his own household. And Lauren's defiance? It couldn't go unanswered. She'd lied, traveled alone, altered her body without permission, made a mockery of their marriage. In Tariq's mind, there was only one solution. He pulled out one of his burner phones and began making inquiries through carefully chosen intermediaries. Men who owed him favors, men who understood discretion. By midnight, he had a name. Hassan Abedi, senior nurse, Al-Barsha Medical Center, night shift, reliable, vulnerable. Most importantly, desperate. Hassan's son needed expensive heart surgery. His family's visa status was precarious. One call to the right government office could unravel everything he'd built. Tariq didn't need a willing participant. He just needed a cornered one. February 22nd, 12:03 a.m. Hassan Abedi was halfway through his night shift when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him check. What he saw made his stomach drop. A video, 10 seconds long. His 6-year-old daughter, Layla, getting out of the car at school the previous morning. The footage was shot from across the street, close enough to see her pink backpack, far enough to go unnoticed. Below the video, a message. Beautiful family. Would be a shame if anything disrupted it. Hassan's hands began shaking. A second message appeared. Room 311. Al-Barsha Medical. The patient is scheduled for discharge tomorrow. She cannot leave this hospital alive. You are a professional. You know how to make complications happen. Hassan felt the air leave his lungs. He typed back. Who is this? The response came immediately. Someone who can make your son's surgery happen next week, or someone who can ensure your family's visas are revoked by Monday. Your son's heart condition. It would be tragic if he couldn't get the care he needs. Wouldn't it? Hassan stared at the screen, his vision blurring. Another message. You have until 3 a.m. Follow instructions or face consequences. I'll be watching. Hassan's phone buzzed one more time. Another video. This one showed his son, Kareem, playing in their apartment courtyard earlier that evening. Someone was watching his family. Right now. Hassan felt his world collapsing. He'd taken an oath. First, do no harm. But what about his own children? What kind of father lets his family become collateral damage for a stranger? February 22nd, 1:15 a.m. Hassan pulled up room 311 in the hospital system. Patient name, Lauren Morrison. Admitted, February 20th. Diagnosis, post-surgical complications, observation. Status, stable. Scheduled for discharge, February 22nd, morning. He read her chart, looked at her photo in the system. 31 years old, mother of 2. She was going to be fine. The notes were clear. Patient responding well, vitals stable, low risk, discharge pending final clearance. This woman was going to walk out of here alive and go home to her children, unless Hassan stopped her. He sat in the break room, head in his hands, trying to breathe. Broken. 2:18 a.m. The hospital was at its quietest. Hassan stood outside room 311, staring through the small window in the door. Lauren Morrison was sleeping peacefully, her breathing steady. The monitor showed normal vitals, heart rate 68, oxygen saturation 98%, blood pressure normal. In 6 hours, she'd be discharged. She'd go home. She'd hold her daughters. Hassan's hand went to the vial in his pocket. Potassium chloride. He'd withdrawn it an hour earlier under the guise of treating a cardiac patient on another floor. He thought about his daughter's smile, his son's fragile heart, his wife's exhausted face after long shifts. Then he thought about this woman's children. Would they remember their mother's voice? Would they grow up wondering why she never came home? Here's the thing about evil. It rarely looks like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a terrified father who chose his children over someone else's mother. Sometimes it looks like a system that values order over justice, where wealth buys silence and power erases accountability. And sometimes it looks like love wrapped in violence, calling itself honor. Hassan stood outside that door for 6 minutes, praying, crying, calculating. At 2:29 a.m., he made his choice. He wiped his face, checked the hallway. Empty. His colleague wouldn't return from break for another 15 minutes. He pulled the syringe from his pocket and drew up the medication. Then he opened the door to room 311 as quietly as possible. Lauren didn't stir. Hassan approached her bedside, his heart hammering against his ribs. He whispered, barely audible, "Forgive me. I have children too." He inserted the syringe into her IV port and pushed. 30 seconds later, Lauren Morrison's heart began dying. February 22nd, 2024, 2:30 a.m. The potassium chloride entered Lauren's bloodstream like poison, disguised as mercy. Hassan withdrew the empty syringe and stepped back from the bed, his entire body trembling. For a moment, nothing happened. Lauren continued sleeping peacefully, her chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Then her hand twitched. It was subtle at first, just a slight movement of her fingers against the white hospital sheet. Then her eyelids fluttered. Her breathing changed, becoming shallow and rapid. The heart monitor began to alarm. Beep, beep, beep. The rhythm that had been so steady moments before started to fracture. Irregular beats, skipped intervals. Lauren's eyes opened, wide and unfocused. Confused. She tried to sit up, but couldn't. Her body wasn't responding the way it should. Her muscles felt heavy, uncooperative. She opened her mouth to call for help, but only a weak gasp came out. Her last conscious thought wasn't of her husband. It wasn't of the surgery, or the lies, or the fear that had followed her from Mexico. It was of her daughters' faces, the way they said "mama" with that slight lisp because they were still learning how their mouths worked, the way they smelled like baby shampoo and mango after their evening baths, the way their small hands felt in hers when they crossed the street. She tried to say their names, tried to hold on to them in her mind like a lifeline, but her body had already been stolen. 2:32 a.m. The monitor's alarm escalated from a warning to a full code alert. The sound pierced through the quiet hospital floor like a scream. Hassan stood frozen for 3 seconds. 3 seconds that felt like hours, before his training overrode his horror. He hit the code button on the wall. Within 30 seconds, the crash team arrived. Dr. Khalid, 2 other nurses, a respiratory therapist. They moved with practiced efficiency, surrounding Lauren's bed like soldiers in a battle they'd fought 100 times before. "What happened?" Dr. Khalid demanded, already checking Lauren's pupils with a penlight. "I don't know," Hassan said, his voice barely steady. "I came to check on her, and the monitor started alarming. She was stable 15 minutes ago." It wasn't technically a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. "She's in cardiac arrest," one of the nurses called out. "Starting compressions." They worked on Lauren for 18 minutes. Chest compressions that cracked ribs. Defibrillator shocks that made her body arch off the bed. Medications pushed through her IV in desperate attempts to restart what had been stopped. Dr. Khalid called out orders with mechanical precision, but even she could hear the futility creeping into her own voice. Again, clear. The shock delivered. Lauren's body convulsed. Nothing. "Come on," Dr. Khalid whispered. "Come on." But Lauren Morrison was already gone. At 2:53 a.m., Dr. Khalid looked at the clock on the wall and made the call she'd been dreading. Time of death, 2:53 a.m. The room fell silent, except for the flat, continuous tone of the heart monitor. One of the younger nurses had tears in her eyes. She was supposed to go home today. She was fine. Dr. Khalid pulled off her gloves, her face tight with frustration. Post-surgical complications. Sometimes they happen without warning. We did everything we could. Hassan stood in the corner, his scrubs soaked with sweat, watching the team disconnect Lauren from the machines that had failed to save her. He felt like he was watching from outside his own body, like this was happening to someone else. But the weight of the syringe in his pocket was real. The image of Lauren's eyes opening in confusion and fear was real. What he'd done was real. 3:10 a.m. The crash team dispersed. Lauren's body was covered with a white sheet, waiting for transport to the morgue. Hassan returned to the nurse's station on shaking legs. He sat down and tried to fill out the incident report, but his hands wouldn't stop trembling. Miriam, the senior nurse on duty, approached him with concern in her eyes. "You okay?" "You look shaken." Hassan stared at the computer screen, the cursor blinking accusingly. I just saw something I'll never unsee." Miriam patted his shoulder. "First code death on your watch?" "Something like that. It never gets easier, but you did everything right. Dr. Khalid said so herself." Hassan nodded numbly. Miriam went back to her station, satisfied that he was just another nurse processing the trauma of losing a patient. But Hassan knew the truth. He hadn't done everything right. He'd done everything wrong, and he'd have to live with that for the rest of his life. 4:47 a.m. Tariq received the call from the hospital just before dawn. He listened in silence as Dr. Khalid explained what had happened. Sudden cardiac arrest, complications from the recent surgery. Despite their best efforts, his wife had passed away. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Mr. Al-Rashid. We did everything we could." Tariq's voice was calm, measured, appropriate. "Thank you, doctor. I appreciate everything you tried to do for her." When he hung up, he sat in the darkness of his study for a long time. Then he deleted the messages from his burner phone and removed the battery. By sunrise, the phone would be at the bottom of Dubai Creek, where it would never be found. The official record would say, natural causes. Complications from elective surgery. No autopsy required. In Dubai's medical system, where cultural sensitivities often outweighed procedural thoroughness, that conclusion would be accepted without question. But in that hospital, at 2:53 a.m., 2 men knew the truth. And one of them couldn't live with it. March 15th, 2024. U.S. Embassy, Dubai. Officer Rachel Martinez stared at the file that had been sitting on her desk for 3 weeks. Lauren Morrison, U.S. citizen. Died February 22nd in Dubai. Cause of death: cardiac arrest due to post-surgical complications. Case closed. Except it shouldn't have been. Rachel had seen hundreds of death certificates come across her desk during her 5 years at the embassy. Most were straightforward: accidents, natural causes, medical emergencies that were tragic, but unremarkable. This one felt different. She opened the file again, reading through the medical examiner's report for the 4th time. The language was clinical, definitive. No autopsy had been performed. Cultural considerations, the report noted. The husband had declined. That detail bothered Rachel more than she wanted to admit. She pulled up Lauren's passport photo on her computer. A young woman with bright eyes and a hopeful smile, 31 years old, mother of 2. Rachel thought about her own sister, Elena. Past tense, because domestic violence doesn't always kill you with hands. Sometimes it kills you with silence. Elena had said those exact words once. "I feel invisible." Rachel hadn't understood then. She'd told Elena she was being dramatic, that marriage required compromise, that she should try harder. 3 months later, Elena was gone. Not dead, but gone in every way that mattered. She'd stopped calling, stopped visiting, disappeared into a life Rachel couldn't reach. Rachel understood now. Every invisible woman became her sister. Every silenced voice became personal. She picked up her phone and called the hospital. March 16th, 2024. Al-Barsha Medical Center. Rachel arrived at the hospital with a list of questions and a growing suspicion that something had been overlooked. Dr. Amina Khalid met her in a small conference room, professional, but visibly tired. "I'm not sure what else I can tell you, Officer Martinez. Mrs. Morrison's death was tragic, but not unusual given the circumstances. Post-surgical complications happen." "Walk me through the timeline again," Rachel said, pulling out her notepad. Dr. Khalid sighed. "She was admitted February 20th with suspected pulmonary embolism. We stabilized her. CT scan showed no major clots. She was improving. Scheduled for discharge on the 22nd. Then at 2:32 a.m. that morning, she went into cardiac arrest. We worked on her for 18 minutes. She didn't make it." "Who was with her when it happened?" "Hassan Abedi, one of our senior nurses. He called the code immediately." Rachel wrote down the name. "Can I speak with him?" "He's not working today, but I can have him contact you." Rachel nodded, then pulled out her phone. "I need to see her medical records. All of them. And I need access to security footage from that night." Dr. Khalid's expression tightened. "That requires authorization from—" "I have authorization," Rachel said firmly, sliding a document across the table. "U.S. citizen. Unexplained death. Embassy investigation. I need everything." 48 hours later, Rachel had what she needed. And none of it made sense. March 18th, 2024. Rachel's office. Rachel spread the documents across her desk like pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit together. First contradiction: Lauren's phone records. The device had been recovered from her hospital room and returned to her mother. Rachel had requested a forensic download of its contents. At 2:45 a.m. on February 22nd, 7 minutes before the code was called, someone had searched "What does a blood clot feel like?" on Lauren's phone. But according to the medical team, Lauren had been asleep. Sedated. The nurse who'd checked on her at 2:15 a.m. confirmed she was resting peacefully. So who made that search? Second contradiction: security footage. Rachel reviewed the hospital's CCTV recordings frame by frame. At 2:31 a.m., Hassan Abedi entered room 311. He remained inside for approximately 90 seconds. Then he exited and stood in the hallway for another minute before re-entering when the alarm sounded. But Hassan's nursing note stated he'd only entered the room once, during the code response at 2:32 a.m. Why lie about a routine patient check? Third contradiction. Pharmacy logs. At 1:47 a.m. on February 22nd, Hassan had signed out 20 milliequivalents of potassium chloride. The indication listed was for a cardiac patient in room 428. Rachel cross-referenced the name. Room 428 had been empty that night, scheduled for maintenance. There was no medical order for potassium chloride for Lauren Morrison, but pharmacy records showed the medication had been withdrawn less than an hour before her death. Rachel leaned back in her chair, her pulse quickening. This wasn't an accident. This was murder. Tariq made one mistake. He assumed that because Lauren was powerless, she was also voiceless. He forgot that dead women can still speak, if someone's willing to listen. March 20th, 2024. Rachel called Patricia Clements, Lauren's mother, who was back in Miami trying to process the impossible reality of burying her daughter. Mrs. Clements, I need to ask you something. Did Lauren send you anything before she died? A package, a letter, anything unusual? Patricia's voice was hoarse from crying. There was an envelope. It came a few days after she left for Dubai. I didn't think anything of it at first. Rachel's heart raced. Do you still have it? Yes, it's here. I haven't been able to open it yet. Mrs. Clements, I need you to open it now, and I need you to send me photos of everything inside. 20 minutes later, Rachel's phone buzzed with incoming images, medical consent forms from a clinic in Guadalajara, hotel receipts, flight itineraries showing the route Lauren had taken, Dubai to Miami, to Houston, to Mexico. And at the bottom, a handwritten note on hotel stationery. Mom, if anything happens to me, look at my husband first. I know how this sounds. I hope I'm wrong. But if you're reading this, I wasn't. I love you. I love my girls. I'm sorry. L. Rachel stared at the words until they blurred. Lauren had known. Maybe not consciously, maybe not with certainty, but some part of her had understood the danger she was in, and she'd left breadcrumbs. March 25th, 2024. Rachel formally requested an autopsy through international diplomatic channels. The UAE Ministry of Health resisted. Cultural protocols, family wishes, case already closed. But Rachel pushed harder. She presented the contradictions, the missing medication, the falsified nursing notes, the Google search that couldn't be explained, and the note that made everything else impossible to ignore. Finally, after 2 weeks of bureaucratic battles, the order came through. Lauren Morrison's body would be exhumed. An independent autopsy would be performed. April 8th, 2024. The toxicology report came back with results that turned suspicion into certainty. Potassium levels in Lauren's blood were 4 times higher than normal. The pattern of distribution indicated rapid IV administration within minutes of death. The medical examiner's revised conclusion was unequivocal. Cause of death: acute hyperkalemia due to potassium chloride poisoning. Manner of death: homicide. Rachel sat in her office, holding the report, feeling a grim satisfaction mixed with profound sadness. Lauren Morrison had been murdered. And now, finally, someone was listening. She picked up the phone and called Dubai Police Department's Criminal Investigation Division. This is Officer Rachel Martinez, U.S. Embassy. I need to report a homicide. Tariq's fatal flaw wasn't cruelty. It was arrogance. He believed his wealth, his connections, his control were absolute. He believed that money could buy silence and power could erase truth. He forgot one thing. Eventually, everyone breaks. April 10th, 2024. Dubai Police Headquarters, Hassan Abedi was arrested at his home at 6:15 a.m. He didn't resist, didn't ask questions. When the officers told him he was being detained in connection with the death of Lauren Morrison, he simply nodded and held out his wrists for the handcuffs. His wife screamed. His children cried. His son, Kareem, clutched his father's leg and begged him not to go. Hassan kissed the top of his head and whispered, "I'm sorry." He'd been expecting this moment since February 22nd. In some ways, it felt like relief. The interrogation room was small, cold, and fluorescent lit. Hassan sat across from Detective Youssef Al-Nakbi, a veteran investigator known for his patience and his ability to read people. "You know why you're here," Detective Al-Nakbi said, sliding a folder across the table. Hassan stared at it, but didn't open it. "Pharmacy records show you withdrew potassium chloride the night Lauren Morrison died. There was no medical order for that medication. Security footage shows you entering her room at 2:31 a.m. Your nursing notes say you never entered until the code was called. The toxicology report confirms she was poisoned." Hassan said nothing. "Did you kill Lauren Morrison?" "No." "Then explain the evidence." "I can't." Detective Al-Nakbi leaned back, studying him. "You're not a criminal, Hassan. Your record is clean. 12 years as a nurse without a single complaint. You have a family, a sick son. I don't think you're a killer. I think you're a man who got trapped." Hassan's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. Day 1 ended with no confession. Day 2 was more aggressive. Different investigators, harder questions, threats of maximum sentencing, reminders that his family's future depended on his cooperation. Hassan repeated the same answer. "I didn't kill her." But his hands shook. His eyes were red-rimmed from sleeplessness. He was cracking, but not breaking. April 12, 2024. Day 3. Detective Al-Nakbi returned to the interrogation room with a different approach. He didn't start with accusations or evidence. He started with a photograph. He placed it on the table in front of Hassan. 2 little girls, 3 years old, identical faces, big brown eyes. They were holding a handmade card decorated with crayon flowers and crooked letters that read, "We miss you, Mama." Hassan stared at the photo. His breathing quickened. "These are Lauren Morrison's daughters," Detective Al-Nakbi said quietly. "Twins, same age as your Layla. Their mother left for a trip and never came home. They don't understand why. They keep asking when Mama is coming back." Hassan's hands started trembling. "They made that card for her, for Mother's Day. Their grandmother couldn't bring herself to throw it away." A tear slid down Hassan's cheek. Detective Al-Nakbi leaned forward. "Look at their faces, Hassan. Really look." Hassan did. And what he saw broke him. "She had the same smile," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Her daughters, they have her smile." His face crumbled. 12 years of professionalism, 48 days of guilt, 3 days of interrogation. It all collapsed in that moment. "I killed her," Hassan sobbed, covering his face with his hands. "I killed her. God forgive me. I killed her." The confession poured out in broken pieces. The threats, the videos, the fear for his own children, the impossible choice. He described every detail: the burner phone messages, the potassium chloride, the moment he pushed the plunger, the way Lauren's eyes had opened in confusion. "I didn't want to," Hassan kept repeating. "I didn't want to. But he said he'd hurt my family. He showed me videos of my children. What was I supposed to do?" "Who threatened you?" Detective Al-Nakbi asked. Hassan hesitated for only a second. "Tariq al-Rashid, her husband." The detective pulled out his phone and showed Hassan a series of screenshots, messages, videos, timestamps. "We traced the phone number that sent you those threats. Burner phone, purchased by Tariq's personal driver 3 days before Lauren's death. The cell tower data places that phone at Tariq's office when the messages were sent. Hassan stared at the evidence, the digital trail that proved what he'd been too terrified to say. The man who claimed to value family, Detective Al-Nakbi said, his voice hard, used a child as a weapon. Hassan buried his face in his hands and wept. April 13th, 2024. Tariq al-Rashid was arrested at his villa while his daughters played in the next room. He didn't panic, didn't shout. He calmly called his lawyer and cooperated with the officers, as if this were a minor inconvenience rather than a murder charge. At the police station, Tariq sat in the interrogation room with the composed demeanor of a man accustomed to being in control. Detective Al-Nakbi laid out the evidence: Hassan's confession, the pharmacy records, the burner phone trail, the threatening messages, the toxicology report, Lauren's note to her mother. Tariq listened without emotion. "Do you have anything to say?" the detective asked. Tariq adjusted his cufflinks, a small, deliberate gesture. "I want my lawyer present before I make any statement." But outside the police station, as Tariq was being led to a transport vehicle, a reporter shouted a question that cut through the noise of cameras and onlookers. "Mr. Al-Rashid, why did you do it? Why did you have your wife killed?" Tariq stopped, turned toward the cameras. For a moment, it seemed like he might stay silent. Then he spoke, his voice calm and unnervingly matter-of-fact. "A woman's disobedience is a man's failure. I corrected my failure." The words landed like a bomb. The reporter stood frozen, microphone still extended. The crowd went silent. Even the officers escorting Tariq seemed momentarily stunned. He believed it, fully, completely, without a trace of doubt or remorse. To him, Lauren's murder wasn't a crime, it was a correction, a restoration of order. He felt no guilt because in his mind, he'd done nothing wrong. November 18th, 2024. Dubai Criminal Court. The trial lasted 7 months. Hassan Abedi was sentenced to 25 years in prison for voluntary manslaughter under duress. The court acknowledged the coercion, but couldn't ignore that he'd made the final choice to take a life. His family's visas were revoked. His wife and children were deported back to Pakistan. Karim's surgery was delayed indefinitely. Tariq al-Rashid was convicted of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and witness tampering. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. When the verdict was read, Tariq showed no reaction, no anger, no regret. He simply stood, adjusted his jacket, and was led away. In the end, Tariq al-Rashid traded his freedom for control, his wife's life for reputation, and his daughter's mother for his own pride. He got exactly what he wanted. Everyone knew his name, just not the way he imagined. December 2024. Miami, Florida. Patricia Clemens sat in her living room, surrounded by boxes of her daughter's belongings that had finally been released and shipped back from Dubai. Clothes that still smelled faintly of Lauren's perfume, books with dog-eared pages, a jewelry box with pieces Patricia recognized from birthdays and Christmases past, and Lauren's phone, the device that had become evidence, the device that had helped convict her killer. Patricia held it in her hands, her thumb hovering over the power button. She'd avoided turning it on for months, afraid of what she'd find, afraid of hearing her daughter's voice in text messages, afraid of seeing her face in photos. But today felt different. The verdict had come through weeks ago. The sentencing was final. The legal battles were over. It was time to remember Lauren as she was, not just as a victim. Patricia powered on the phone and opened the photo gallery. She scrolled past family photos, pictures of the twins as newborns, snapshots of Dubai's skyline. Then She reached the last photo Lauren had taken, the one from the mirror in Guadalajara. Lauren was glowing, hair messy, no makeup, eyes bright with something Patricia hadn't seen in years. Hope. Patricia touched the screen gently, as if she could reach through the glass and hold her daughter one more time. She whispered, "You were finally happy, weren't you, baby?" Across the world in Dubai, Tariq's mother sat with her twin granddaughters in her home. The girls had been placed in her custody after their father's conviction. She was trying her best to raise them with love. One of the twins found a photograph tucked into a book, Lauren smiling, holding both girls as infants. "That's Mama," the child said softly. "Yes, Habibti, that's your Mama. Why doesn't she come see us anymore?" The grandmother looked away. In her mind, her son had been dishonored. What Lauren did was wrong. But these children, innocent, motherless, were the real victims of a tragedy that should never have happened. "Your Mama loved you very much," she said carefully. "She's watching over you always." The twin studied the photo with innocent eyes. "She looks happy." "She was," the grandmother said quietly, though the words felt heavy in her mouth. Lauren left breadcrumbs, not because she knew she'd die, but because part of her feared she might. The sealed envelope with the note that said, "If anything happens to me, look at my husband first." It saved the case. The deleted video message where she almost confessed her fear. Investigators recovered it from cloud backup, and it became evidence of her state of mind. The 47 drafted Instagram captions she never posted. Prosecutors used them to establish a pattern of fear, control, and silencing. The compression garment cut away by paramedics. It proved the surgery, revealed the lies, and opened the door to the truth. Those breadcrumbs became the rope that pulled truth out of darkness. On this channel, we don't just tell crime stories. We tell stories about people who were silenced, and the truth that refused to stay buried. We tell stories about systems that fail, and investigators who refuse to let them. We tell stories about control disguised as love, and the deadly price people pay for wanting freedom. Lauren Morrison's crime wasn't vanity. It wasn't disobedience. Her crime was believing her body, her choices, her joy belonged to her. And for that, she was erased. But here's what Tariq al-Rashid didn't count on. Lauren refused to stay silent. Even in death, she spoke. Through evidence, through courage, through the small acts of self-preservation she'd hidden in plain sight. Her crime was never the surgery. Her crime was believing she had the right to choose. And his crime? His crime was making sure she never would again. Lauren Morrison was 31 years old when she died. She was a daughter, a mother, a woman who just wanted to feel like herself again. She deserved to grow old, to watch her daughters graduate, to dance at their weddings, to be more than a cautionary tale. But she became something else instead. She became proof that dead women can still fight back. If this story made you feel something, anger, grief, recognition, subscribe and share it. Because stories like Lauren's only stop repeating when we refuse to look away.